Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the next Adventures manga review. And with me is Hairylawn.
What is up, everyone?
Well, it's time. Black and White 2. What did you think?
Black 2 and White 2. Honestly, as a standalone, it's pretty good. In terms of placement, if I had to like tier list it, I'd have to put it probably a little bit on the lower end. Um, but it's not bad. It's still actually super duper solid. I just happen to like the others more. But for me in the ranking, I'd probably have to give this one fifth place,
Hmm.
unfortunately.
And it's not
Um,
like a bad thing too. It's because I feel like it's basically a continuation of pretty much Black and White 1, just with different characters. We're not really going to anything new.
No, and that's exactly what it is, right?
Yeah.
But my issue with this part of the series is that there's a lot of loose ends that aren't exactly tied up. Don't get me wrong, a lot of the stuff that happened in Black and White, the original manga, it they get their happy ending, they get their sequel. That's the point of this part of the manga. My only complaint is that there's not really a fulfilling feeling after the fact because it just felt so abrupt. I'm not saying like they need to like drag something out because nothing worse than like trying to drag out a story that has a good ending. With this one, like for example, like with the male protagonist Blake, Japanese name Black Two, code name Black Two, or Black Number Two, whichever. He kind of just moves away and then he just comes back as like someone in disguise. He comes back as Chorus in disguise, but that's for another thing to talk about. But that's just for me. I really like the other ones a lot better, but this one is also super duper strong. It's just not as high on the list for me by comparison.
Right, and I feel the same way because, like I said, it doesn't really feel like we're going to a new region or exploring something new that we haven't seen before. It just basically feels like a continuation of what we already saw from Black and White 1.
Oh, absolutely. Um, Speaking of that, what do you think about our two protagonists? I've already mentioned Blake,
Mhm.
and then his female counterpart is Whitley, otherwise known as Y2 in the Japanese name. What do you think is them as protagonists?
I think they were good overall, but I think if you're comparing these protagonists from Black and White 1, I would prefer Black and White 1 over them just because I think they were a little bit stronger. With White 2, she was okay as a protagonist.
She is Team Plasma.
Yeah.
She was just keeping the identity a secret. So she moved away from her hometown after the fall of Team Plasma 2 years prior, in the Black and White manga. So she had to kind of keep her identity secret because Team Plasma caused that whole like scenario 2 years prior. So there's not exactly looked upon in a favorable light. So the thing with like Blake or Black Two or Lek Two or whatever, he is actually a undercover cop. He actually acts a lot older than he gives off. I mean, he's only like 12 or something in the manga at this point, and apparently he's deemed a genius, like a prodigy. But his whole thing was to discover like the whereabouts of Team Plasma and like we'll find out where and what their next plot is, considering that the Team Plasma has returned now under not Getzes, but Colress, as we all know from the sequel. And honestly, because he's a cop, it's almost like he's apathetic, doesn't really have any real emotions. He's just doing everything to complete his mission. And so part of that was befriending Whitley and gaining her trust, considering the fact that he basically was sus that she was the Team Plasma member that he was looking for with the locket and all that. And we come to find out that she is. But at first you think that like he's very like one-dimensional, very like focused on only completing the mission, but come to find out he was just simply misrepresented at times. For example, I remember distinctly there was a there's a few panels, there's a chapter where Keldeo was second guessing teaming up with him because his whole shtick was to find like a master or partner that is righteous and full of justice. And you would think with like say a cop in the case of Lack 2, you would think that he'd be the one to, oh, I don't know, like pursue that. But Keldeo started questioning that and was like, "Oh, my teachers, which is the three like swords of justice, Cobalion, Terrakion, Virizion, we think that they misjudged Blake, but in fact, we as the viewer misjudge Blake alongside Keldeo. He does have those qualities. It's just the way he portrays it isn't as clear cut as you would expect for a protagonist. The fact that he could help Keldeo reach his resolute form and defeat like all those legendary Pokemon, team up with them is a testament to his abilities. And real talk, it's kind of nice to have someone who's super clear cut, no BS as a
Hmm.
person. Because the last few male protagonists have been goal driven by like kind of self interest. For Blake, we kind of see him like act in the good of the people. However, there are times where that like self-interest and selfishness does shine through, and it's also a pride thing, which makes him not a one-dimensional character and subjective to fault. What do you think about Whitley, though, his counterpart, as the former, or I guess, quote-unquote, Team Plasma spy or whatever?
I honestly thought she was okay. I mean, I for this manga, for me, I didn't draw much interest into Whitley as I did to Blake. I guess Blake for me just holds more of an interest because obviously he was like a pretty much like I guess a detective going in there, where she was already like born into Team Plasma and all that stuff. So for me, like she was cool and all, but for me, she doesn't hold that much of a good interest as Blake did. I mean, her storyline was cool where she was like born into Team Plasma and all, but like her storyline of it wasn't as, I guess, prominent as I thought Blake was. But I mean, what did you think?
Well, I think with Whitley, the thing about her is that uh, she shares a lot of the core ideals of the original Team Plasma. Not the Team Plasma, basically, Neo Team Plasma. And I think that kind of Neo Team Plasma mindset was kind of shown through even in the original, where it wasn't to liberate Pokemon, it was to take over the Unova region and use them for their own means. That's different. And I think at Whitley's core, she is more so the good of the Pokemon. That's why she stuck with N's principles and idolized them.
Yeah.
Uh,
Mm-hmm. That's also why
I
she
was more.
has like a picture of N on her pendant, if you ever remember
Mhm,
that.
I do. Um, it was kind of weird that like N like kind of remembered her. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but that was probably just plot armor protagonist moment because like from his point of view, I thought she's just some like
Right.
any other Team Plasma member. But it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, I find her a lot more compelling um compared to other protagonist like female protagonist heroines. But I guess overall she's a little bit on the weaker side for me. And that's not her fault per se. That's just because of her the way they like set her up as a character. They also have to have some kind of quirk. As you know from like the past like protagonists, they all have like a title. Blake is known as the arrester because he's a cop,
Mm-hmm.
and then Whitley is known as the liberator since she's a part of the original philosophy, which actually, now that I'm thinking about it, is quite beautiful with like how they're kind of like yin and yang, if you
Yeah.
will, black and white, no pun intended. He arrests, confines, she liberates, frees, that kind of thing. They counteract each other, but one cannot exist without the other, if you will, kind of like yin and yang, which is a bit of a different dynamic compared to black and white, who share the dreamer title for their own respective dreams. And we already talked about that in the last video, but I thought it'd be important to bring up here. And speaking of black and white, because again, this is a sequel, we get completion and follow up of what happens to all of our main characters in the first part. So, if you remember the end of the black and white manga, Black was forced inside of the White Stone
Mm-hmm.
with Reshiram, and everyone was trying to spend those 2 years trying to find ways to free him to no avail. But we come to find out that he had been communicating with Reshiram. He was conscious the entire time because they knew about Hiram being controlled, the three forces of nature, Thunderous, Landorus, Tornadus being controlled by Coruscant's team, Genesect. Like they all kind of knew that was happening. They were just plotting for the right moment to be freed. And I'm really happy for White because she misses him, right?
Well,
It's
yeah, I
like,
mean, he sacrificed himself believing he's gone forever. So.
and then like 2 years later, he's back. And honestly, that's another good love story that kind of had a happy ending. They butted heads a lot in the beginning, and like they had their own ambitions, but they grew closer together, and enough to the point where like they grieved over the loss of one another. And so I'm really glad they got that happy ending. But then there's the subplot with Hugh, and Hugh doesn't have a manga exclusive name. We all know him as Hugh from the games as well. But what do you think about him? Me personally, real quick, I thought he was extremely aggressive.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah, I think he was like, I think he was too much, if I should say that. Maybe a little bit extra.
You think so? He was like over the top with.
Yeah,
with it.
I guess when I'm comparing it to the game, to the manga, yeah, he seems a lot more different in comparison to the game. You know, BW2, he's more of a chill type of rival, and this one he's a little bit just more energetic, if I should say.
In his defense, he was like kind of tweaking.
Yeah.
Over the fact that like he's like traumatized that Team Plasma had kidnapped his little sister's gifted Pokemon Purloin.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just kind of funny how it came full circle that the Purloin that N used, never evolved and all that, was the first Pokemon that he stole for his mission, and it happened to be Hugh's sister's Purloin. So the fact that like, do you remember that panel or that chapter where he encounters N and that Purloin like fights him off and like either doesn't recognize him or purposely ignores him?
Yes.
That was like that set him off. I remember that. He was distraught. But after everything was said and done, I remember the panel, they reunited and the Purloin was like, oh yeah, that's right. My original owner. That kind of thing. And it's just one of those characters like you can't help but feel bad for it because he was manipulated.
Yeah.
Getsus manipulated him. And so a large part of Black 2 White 2 was him redeeming himself for his actions in the first game. And I think that kind of draws his story to a close as well, because he accepts the fact that Getsus, his father, views him as a monster, doesn't love him. But he remains true to his own character by trying to make him understand. And Getsus remains true to his own character by discarding him and viewing him as a pawn and a disgusting freak of nature. You know, things that like you shouldn't hear from your own father.
And it's also rough for N's childhood, going back to Black and White 1, because he was raised to become like the next king of Team Plasma. So, like, you know, he had to discard those feelings in order to lead Team Plasma to whoever they were.
I'm wondering if N was willing to part ways with Zekrom had he let Black like stay alive or something like that. Because realistically, as we know in the Pokemon like manga, even in the anime, they simply just team up with a lot of these legendary Pokemon. They don't eat them per se. Like, for example, Blake had Keldeo, had Victini for a little bit because Victini was a part of helping Black in the original. He had the Genesect as well. And I think what I liked about the whole Genesect thing in the manga is that it really hammers in the fact that like Genesect is a man-made Pokemon brought back to life, right? And there were probably like thousands of the original Genesect back in time, in ancient times. They just revived it. The fact that Victini and Keldeo helped out like Blake, again, is another testament to his character. He's not as bad as we like thought. We thought he's just some like cold calculating cop, but he's more than that at this point. Whitley doesn't use any legendary Pokemon, which is fine. Not saying they have to, but I think what's interesting about her is that she also refuses to keep her Pokemon in Pokeballs, which is actually pretty on
on par
brand.
with what I guess N idolized of like
N,
Pokemon shouldn't be capitalized and all that.
Yeah, like in captivity.
Yeah.
It's just that like she only uses it when like necessary. I wonder if she like is actually over like Blake, cause like let me put it frankly, like Blake like rizzed her up and then like dumped her.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like the equivalent of love bombing. Like, but it was all for his mission. Um, and it's funny because the manga for Black 2 White 2 starts. We kind of get we get a glimpse of like Blake's character when it starts off with him breaking up with Yancey. I don't know if you remember Yancey from the games. Do you?
I think so.
So Yancey and his counterpart and her counterpart, I forgot his name. Um, you can actually go out. You can actually date some characters in the game, but it's like you meet them at the Ferris wheel because it's like a little side quest where you pick up a lost cross transceiver, and
Mhm.
over time as you talk to them by voice and through, you finally meet them in person that they're an idol, and like you date them. So like him breaking up with Yancey in the beginning is just a quick little Easter egg to that side quest in the manga.
Wow,
But again, he's
what
doing everything he
savageness,
can
bro.
to. I know. Blake's team is actually kind of banger. It's a pretty decent testament to Unova in itself. Um, certainly, certainly there's a theme going on with his team, as opposed to like other teams. His is very heavy on slicing, cutting, sharp like that.
Hmm.
And apparently, some trivia according to the wiki, all of his Pokemon are known to have the serious nature.
Oh,
Nothing else.
probably
Um,
count like
yeah,
reflects him as a detective.
exactly. So, Blake's team consists of a Duat, the blade of his team, Genesect, the cannon of his team, Keldeo, the sword of his team, Kabutops, the sickle of his team, Gliscor, the scissors of his team, and Parablast, the spear of his team. They're all weapons.
Hmm.
So, again, that's another way he has a representation of his character as using Pokemon like tools, which is really ironic because that completely, again, opposes the ideology of Team Plasma, which is Whitley's association.
Hmm.
So, again, there's a balancing act where he is using them as tools, but he doesn't treat them like tools per se, but he uses them like then and there as a means to an end, as opposed to Whitley, who only has 3 Pokemon at any time, and any of the Pokemon she does like use or assist her don't belong to her, or she like releases. She had the Fungus, she had the Shelmet, which evolves into Selgor, and then like she had the Carablast, but they traded that away. He had Gigi, which was
Tempeh.
the
Yeah.
Tepig,
Yeah.
yeah, Tepig owned by N, which if you remember was originally White's
Whites.
Tepig.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Zorua. She also freed a whole bunch of other Pokemon at some, but she doesn't actually use Pokemon herself and
Hmm.
like call them her owner, which is a stark contrast again from Black 2. So,
She really keeping that Team Plasma brand name to real.
hmm I know. I do like that in this one they took all the elements of the actual games and incorporated it, especially in the legendaries. So, DNA splicers, you have Kyurem. They try to freeze like Unova all over again. They freeze Lucid City, and then they also have Kyurem White, Kyurem Black, and then you also have the. Do you remember the Therian forms for the genies? That was
Oh,
also in.
yeah.
Yeah, like they're like a bird, um, a fist man, and a tiger or whatever.
Yeah.
Uh, and then Keldeo Resolute form, his like complete form, things like that. So it's a very good callback to Black 2 and White 2 with like how they incorporated all those like newer elements in as well. And despite it not being higher on my list, again, super solid Pokemon manga.
What did you think of the final battle when it ended? And they all graduated from this trainer school.
It was a pretty good conclusion. We don't really see much of Black 2 anymore. We know that he becomes Colress in the end. He becomes like Colress to like continue the mission, and I think that's like a small callback to the side quest that Ultra Moon and Ultra Sun did. But I guess it's all right because like the police job is never done. Because there was a time where he actually got fired. Do you remember that? They actually like fired him from his position
Yeah.
and told someone else to take over. And he was like, "No, I'm gonna see this to the end. Screw what you say." And so because of his actions, they had no choice but to reinstate him. Because he's pretty high up the ladder. He's like Looker's superior in terms of like, as far as like the hierarchy goes.
Hmm.
As for Whitley, you don't really see much of her until X and Y again,
Yeah.
where she had the Delphox. Um, Otherwise, it was a pretty satisfying conclusion. All those things we mentioned before, and parting ways with Zekrom and uh, Black, like parting ways with Reshiram, reuniting with his friends and all that. I don't know if he actually aged, but like everyone else is like older than him, right? Like Bianca's much like the game. Bianca became like a lab assistant.
Hmm.
Sharon became a teacher and gym leader of the school that where our main two protagonists for this part of the series met. Oh, and that's right. Didn't Older step down?
Oh yeah, he did sit
Older
down.
stepped
Didn't
down.
was it Iris that took over?
Iris takes over as the champion. That's right. I forgot. Yeah. So I think they stayed pretty true to that too.
I think overall, as we're concluding the video, it's not a
Mhm.
bad manga. Like as we were obviously summarizing and just recapping our thoughts, it's just like not as strong as like the previous mangas that we have discussed, and that's just my opinion. But I think the action was there, but I guess the action wasn't as prominent as just the other mangas that hooked me on more. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Overall, I think that they 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 tied a lot to the main game and gave Black and White the ending that I really needed. There was lackluster in some areas,
Hmm.
and I think that also partially is due to the characters themselves.
Hmm.
Um, but I appreciate the effort, and it's actually super duper solid.
Right. Eh,
If I had to give this one, I probably had to give Black 2 White 2 a solid 7.
mhm.
Not my favorite, but not the worst
Yeah, I go about
at all.
7, 6.5 too. And it's not like it's a bad thing, but like for me, as I said, it just feels like a continuation of the old one, right? It doesn't feel like we went somewhere new.
I was just going to say, the fact that it is a continuation is also a flaw in itself. It's not the manga's fault.
Mm-hmm.
It's simply it's a victim of circumstances, but they did their best with like how
Right.
they wrapped up the series, and I'm pretty content with it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the only thing I really wanted to see more was them having a fully fledged out team, and I actually wanted to see more of Black re-challenging the Elite Form
Mm-hmm.
because didn't he became champion?
Mm-hmm.
He became champion in the original, but he never defeated N and or Alder. So he was only champion in the tournament, but not champion of the region, unlike Iris.
Right.
And I would like to see them fight that one because it's not that I don't want them to achieve their dreams, but it would be nice to see like kind of like that redux, like that redo. I want to see Black recollect all the gym badges, and I don't want to see the process again per se. I want to see him fight Iris, see if he
Mm-hmm.
has what it takes to become the champion, the true
Mm-hmm.
champion of the league, because that was his dream, right?
Yeah.
So, other than that, I'm I'm pretty happy with it.
Yeah, me too. I'm pretty happy with this manga too. I think it's a pretty solid manga. Not my favorite, but it's still really solid to read.
For sure. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one. Hopefully, we don't take 3 years on it.
Yeah,
But
hopefully.
let yeah, but y'all let us know what you guys think about this. Um, because maybe we got some things wrong. Maybe you don't agree with our opinion, but it's a discussion. So let us know what y'all think. Until next time.
Yep. Take care.